Gojo Satoru was the strongest sorcerer of the modern era, and could probably even be called the strongest sorcerer ever if he wasn't defeated by Sukuna. But what if Gojo didn't go into that fight with all his cards on the table? What if he had an ace up his sleeve, just like Sukuna had Mahoraga and merged Beast Agito? In today's video, I'll be exploring what could happen if Gojo unlocked a brand new technique, Lime Green, during his battle against Sukuna. Before I get into what Lime Green is, we have to understand the foundation it's built on. The Limitless technique is one of the most conceptually deep powers in all of manga, and Gege Akutami clearly put a lot of thought into it. The Limitless is a curse technique passed down through the Gojo clan, and at its most basic level, it manipulates the concept of infinity itself. Space between any 2 points can always be subdivided infinitely, meaning anything approaching Gojo gets caught in that infinite subdivision and simply stops. That's Gojo's passive infinity, the default state that makes it impossible for enemies to land a hit even when he's not looking. But the Limitless isn't just a shield, and Gojo uses it offensively through 2 techniques, red and blue. Red is when Gojo amplifies his Limitless in the positive direction by leaning into the concept of convergence, creating what's effectively a singularity. It creates a point in space where everything is pulled together, where the infinite subdivision collapses inward and generates an irresistible attractive force. Blue creates a localized black hole of cursed energy that draws everything toward it, and anything caught in its range gets dragged in and crushed. With red, Gojo uses reverse curse technique with his Limitless, which inverts its fundamental property. Instead of infinite attraction, he generates infinite repulsion, pushing targets away with catastrophic force. But what happens when you combine attraction and repulsion? In Jujutsu Kaisen, you get Hollow Purple. When Gojo simultaneously activates red and blue, the 2 techniques collide, and something that should be mathematically impossible occurs. Hollow Purple is an imaginary mass that exists outside the real number line of cursed energy. It undoes whatever it touches by simply removing it from existence as if it were never there. But while these techniques are pretty intense, the problem is that Sukuna knew all about them when he stepped into the Shinjuku showdown. The early stages of that fight are Gojo at his peak, with him using infinity effortlessly, maintaining 6 eyes that see through every technique, and throwing blue and red with precision. But then Sukuna plays his ace, Mahoraga. Mahoraga can adapt to any phenomenon through the rotation of its wheel, and fundamentally rewriting its own relationship with the phenomena that was hurting it. But Sukuna doesn't use Mahoraga as just a weapon. He was carefully watching the Shikigami to figure out if he could replicate Mahoraga's techniques. Mahoraga's initial adaptation changed the attributes of its cursed energy to negate the infinity, which is something Sukuna couldn't do himself. So Sukuna waited until Mahoraga's second adaptation, which wasn't a flying slash, but an expansion of Mahoraga's target. The slash was not targeting Gojo, but the entire space and world around them. Sukuna used this model to expand the target of his dismantle, to cut the world itself, with no regard for infinity, producing the world-cutting slash. Gojo's ultimate defense, the shield he's carried since he was 17 years old, finally fails, and the slash bisects Gojo horizontally, completely severing the top half of his body. Now, here's what I want you to really sit with. Gojo goes down because Sukuna solved him, and Mahoraga adapted to the one thing that made Gojo functionally unkillable, his passive infinity. Gojo couldn't match Sukuna in pure offensive power, and losing infinity meant he could no longer outmaneuver the King of Curses. And this got me thinking, was there any other way the fight could have gone? Hollow Purple is born when blue and red collide head-on, generating an imaginary mass, which means there should be more imaginary techniques we can derive from this system. Gojo discovered reverse curse technique during his fight with Toji Fushiguro, when he was on the brink of death, desperate to survive. Against Sukuna, Mahoraga, and Agito, he finds himself in a similar predicament, and just like the last time he had his back against the wall, he finds a solution. What if instead of combining blue and red together, Gojo tried to use the space that is neither red nor blue? This would be a neutral point in the zone of pure Limitless before it resolves into attraction or repulsion. This is Lime Green. Lime Green is absolute stasis created when the Limitless technique is stripped of directional intent. But here's why it's different from doing nothing. Lime Green doesn't mean the Limitless is off. It means the Limitless is everywhere at once. Every direction is simultaneously attracting and repelling at perfectly matched magnitudes, and the net result for anything caught inside it is pure inertia. The target's cursed energy and their ability to initiate change on anything, including their own technique, becomes perfectly locked into its current state. When Mahoraga's wheel rotates to adapt to Gojo's infinity, that adaptation has to be processed and transmitted to Sukuna. Gojo realizes that there's a moment between when Mahoraga adapts and when Sukuna can use that adapted understanding, but he can't exploit that time lag by targeting Sukuna's body. So instead, Gojo decides to use Lime Green to freeze Sukuna's cursed energy state. Now, in the original storyline, Gojo killed Agito by firing blue at maximum output and combining the same attack with red to generate a hollow purple that destroyed Mahoraga. But this time, Gojo doesn't fire red and risk the attack being intercepted before it can merge and form hollow purple. Now that he's landed a few black flashes, Gojo's cursed energy reserves are replenished, and he has the strength to try out his new technique. The moment lime green is applied, Sukuna's cursed energy is frozen in its current configuration. This is a big deal, because Sukuna needed to integrate Mahoraga's workaround for infinity in order to construct the world-cutting slash. At this point, from Sukuna's perspective, nothing is happening. Gojo has taken damage, his infinity has been compromised, and Mahoraga is still on the battlefield. The only visual cue Sukuna gets is a shimmer in the air that takes on the most washed-out shade of green imaginable, barely visible to the naked eye. Sukuna falls under the technique, but he hasn't taken any damage and can still move freely. But the effect kicks in when he tries to deliver the world-cutting slash. Sukuna's body still moves, but he realizes that he can only initiate cleave or dismantle the way he's done it for centuries. No matter how hard he tries to elevate cleave to the world-cutting slash, the technique simply won't form. But what about the 10 shadows? Since Sukuna is in Megami's body and it's a natural technique, Lime Green can't prevent Sukuna from summoning more Shikigami. He quickly realizes what's about to go down and dashes behind Mahoraga for cover while he comes up with a plan. For the first time in this fight, the King of Curses is truly stuck, and Gojo has foiled his plan without even knowing what it was. Gojo moves immediately. He knows he can't maintain a technique as demanding as Lime Green for too long, as it will exhaust him faster than familiar ones. He fires blue to move Sukuna from behind Mahoraga, and as a distraction, drags the King of Curses to one side. Gojo fires red, explosively repelling Mahoraga in the opposite direction. Sukuna knows he's getting nowhere with his regular curse technique and tries to open his domain, but the damage done to his brain is too high and it immediately falls apart. Gojo seizes the opportunity, and while maintaining Lime Green on Sukuna, he finally manages to fire Hollow Purple at Mahoraga. We already know from the manga that the Divine General did not adapt to Hollow Purple, because even though it's a combination of red and blue, which Mahoraga had already adapted to, purple is fundamentally different. In the moment that he generated Hollow Purple, Gojo's control over Lime Green lapsed for just a second, and as Mahoraga disintegrates, Sukuna erupts. But he's just a second too late, and Gojo is already inside his domain. At the start of the fight, both sorcerers had equally refined domains, which canceled out each other's sure-hit effects, but Sukuna had an advantage. Since Malevolent Shrine has an open barrier, it could attack Unlimited Void from the outside, and as we already know, Gojo's domain is vulnerable to external attacks. But now, Sukuna is too exhausted to open his own domain, and while maintaining Unlimited Void weakens Infinity, Sukuna only gets a couple of slashes in before he feels the force of Gojo's domain. Sukuna's mind is overloaded with raw information that burns away his curse technique and any sense of self that he had. The fight is completely winnable now, and Uraume senses their master's demise. Elsewhere, Kinjaku and Takaba end their battle, and Yuta appears to behead Kinjaku, putting an end to the sorcerer who started it all. With the antagonists of the Heian era gone for good, Jujutsu Society can go back to normal. But there's still one question. What happens to the culling game? In the original timeline, it took a while for the sorcerers to agree to simply stop participating, as there were many factions that were evenly matched in strength. But this time, Gojo Satoru stands head and shoulders above them all, as the sorcerer that killed the King of Curses. Under Gojo's orders, the killing promptly ends, and all that's left is for the remaining sorcerers to work on undoing the barriers set up across the colonies. But what do you think? Would Lime Green have been enough to stop Sukuna, or would he have still found a way around it? Drop your ideas in the comments, and stay tuned for more incredible JJK videos.